So I was going to speak for a few minutes and give you some history so that you can put in perspective what it was like to be African American in 1944, actually between 40 and 44 at Pratt. But thank you very much, Mr. Gaddy and faculty administration and of course the club for honoring my father in this way. Regarding his 1944 graduation from Pratt. So this is my first time back at Pratt, actually, since 1965.
Welcome back.
In 1965 or 66, I attended the Higher Achievement Program as a rising 8th grader. And I wasn't a great student in elementary school, so to no one's surprise, my admission to prep was rejected the next year, despite the fact that two of my brothers were attending here at the same time. And they graduated in 67 and 69. But today I'm a partner at a Wall Street law firm. I served for almost 4 years as a senior official in the Obama administration. And I guess the lesson with all of that is you don't have to graduate from prep to be successful. All kidding aside, I wanted to share with you some of the reflections on my dad and his career and the impact that the prep had on it. And the question for me is, how do you take the measure of a man appropriately in 5 minutes? Give you a sense of him and his time, because history is important to understand where we've been in order to know where we are and where we're going. My father will be 92 soon. His life spanned a good portion of the history of this country. And that history hasn't been entirely pleasant for African Americans. Like all African Americans, those times were difficult for my father to navigate. My father was born in the mid-1920s, so he's an old guy. And his parents, both of his parents, his mother and his father, were medical doctors. And they had met at Howard Medical School. Their family, as it grew, moved to Jersey City. And like many other Americans who come to Jersey City, they were seeking, a share of the American dream. His parents were from Washington, D.C. and Virginia, and his mom, who was a pretty celebrated doctor in her own right, and whose name is on one of the charter schools in Jersey City, actually, Lena Edwards, was from a long line of doctors dating back to just after the Civil War. And my niece, in fact, is part of the 6th generation of doctors in our family. And in the segregated society in the 1920s, when my father was born, in the 30s and 40s, my grandparents, their patients were all black, as you might expect. My father is the second of 6 children, and was raised nearby on Pacific Avenue. His older sister, who is 95, is also a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. So imagine that. My grandmother came out of Howard Medical School in 1920. She was the 8th black woman doctor in the country. So about that, the history that I mentioned, you'll remember that America was a segregated country, racially, in the 1920s. Blacks lived separate lives from whites in their own communities and were not permitted by law in many states to fraternize with whites. In their own, blacks were legally banned from eating in public restaurants with whites and from attending the same schools. And from intermarrying with whites. Large numbers of lynchings of African Americans occurred in many parts of the country, but especially in the South, during the first several decades of my father's life, actually. And the underlying crime often was merely looking at a white woman the wrong way. Got you lynched. So that was the world that my father was born into. Within a short period of time after his birth, the financial crisis in the U.S. occurred, and the Great Depression ensued, and so things got tremendously worse for everyone, especially African Americans. Most people, black and white, had no education. Were just a few years of, they had a few years of grammar school. That's kind of the average education in America. Little food, no jobs, and little hope. And so I don't know how my dad wound up at prep under those circumstances in that time. But my guess is it is because his parents were devout Catholics and had a burgeoning, medical reputation in Jersey City. We don't know much about my dad's years at prep, the clubs he participated in, or the sports that occupied his time. We know only that he was a disciplined and good student. You might expect he'd have to be, as the only African American in the class, and you might expect he probably took a lot of taunts and other things from kids. We do know that prep was a formative experience for him in terms of his intellectual rigor, his focus on religious education, and the imposition of discipline necessary for success in life. To me, that's part of the formula that this place offers. The second thing we know about prep was my father met my mother on a blind date during his prep years. And they were together for more than 40 years after that meeting, until her death. So after graduating from prep, my dad joined the U.S. Navy at the end of World War II, was assigned to the Navy's submarine service, and worked as a clerk, because blacks, that's all they could get in the Navy in those days. And his submarine patrolled the east coast of the U.S., from New London, Connecticut, down to Guantanamo Bay and back. The submarine service taught him that he needed to continue his education. And so during this time, he eloped with my mom. I don't recommend it to. And they started their family, which eventually yielded 8 kids. And my sister and I, Stephanie, are 2 of those 8. I'm the youngest boy, she's the youngest girl. And two of those kids attended prep, as I say, during the 60s. And one of them is a medical doctor and a neuroradiologist. So prep can do good things for you if you pay attention. While matriculating at Seton Hall University, my dad took Army ROTC courses and became an Army officer during the Korean War. The Army funded his medical school education at Howard. And like his parents, he attended Howard at a time when universities and grad schools were still very segregated. The Army was just becoming integrated, and interestingly, his mom was one of his anatomy professors at Howard, at medical school. When he received his medical degree, my dad served as a captain in the Army Medical Corps and the Army Reserve, and then moved back to Jersey City for his residency training as a pediatrician. Like his parents, our family started our lives in Jersey City on Pacific Avenue. Then a very segregated inner city environment. All of this building that you see around in downtown Jersey City didn't exist. His practice consisted of healing the children of the poor and the African American clientele. Generally, white patients did not come to black doctors in those days. As he established himself in the community and in the Jersey City medical profession, the family moved to, I guess it would be considered Midtown, Jersey City now, but Bentley Avenue, which at the time was a white enclave of doctors. And I was 6 or something when we moved. Our neighbors welcomed us by petitioning the mayor to have us removed from Bentley Avenue, fearing, black upward mobility. And the petition did not succeed to dislodge us. My dad served the Jersey City community as a pediatrician for about 40 years, treating thousands of minority children, often for little or no compensation. He also became the Hudson County medical examiner, who was called by the police to examine bodies of people who they believed had passed away or been murdered. My dad was also a key contributor to his profession in Hudson County, and in recognition of that fact, he was elected to serve as president of the Hudson County Medical Society by his peer doctors, including the white doctors. When my mom died in the 1980s, my father wound down his medical practice and retired to enjoy his children and his many, many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. As you can see, his life was punctuated by adversity. Some because that was what America was like. But the measure of a man is determined by how he confronts and overcomes the challenges presented. And how he does that with grace and good humor. And the extent to which he leaves behind a legacy for his family, his profession, his community, and his country. Those values, I think, are imbued in all of us by a place like Pratt. It is part of its mission and its heritage. It is what succors you in the best of times and the worst of times. It is about building character. So I wanted to thank you again for honoring my father and our family. While he might have been the first African American to attend the school under difficult circumstances, we are pleased to see that many more African Americans and people of all diverse backgrounds have followed in his footsteps. And the mission of the school has stayed the same for the last 60 plus years since my father's graduation. Thank you very much.